Emma's hands trembled as she opened the email, the room silent except for the faint hum of her laptop. Her heart pounded like a drum when she read Daniel's name, his words dripping with betrayal. Daniel said, "You were never meant to know, Emma. It's not personal." She felt her chest tighten, betrayal cutting deeper than any blade. Just last night he had held her close, whispering promises of forever. Now those same lips had crafted lies that destroyed her. The office walls seemed to close in, shadows stretching like fingers strangling her resolve. Emma whispered, "How could you do this to me?" Her voice cracked, a sound so fragile it almost broke her. She remembered Sarah, her best friend, laughing at lunch days ago, and now Sarah's name appeared in Daniel's confession. Emma's world tilted, her trust shattered into jagged shards. Rage flickered in her eyes as tears blurred her vision. The betrayal was not just of love, but of dignity, of friendship, of everything she had believed. For Emma, this was no accident. It was war, and war would demand her answer. Emma sat in silence, the hum of the refrigerator filling the void. Her heart ached, but the pain burned into anger. She whispered, "You took everything, Daniel, but you won't take me." Memories swarmed, fragments of love now poisonous reminders. The betrayal felt like glass buried under her skin. Every breath scraped like broken shards inside her chest. She clutched a framed photo of her and Daniel, the smiles now mocking. Rage built until her hands shook. She hurled the photo across the room, glass exploding against the wall, shards scattering like her trust. Emma stood frozen, chest heaving, staring at the wreckage. The silence afterward felt deafening, pressing against her skull. She pressed her palms against her face, sobbing into her hands. Yet beneath the grief, a dangerous thought took root. She whispered again, "I will rise. I swear it." Her tears slowed, resolve flickering like a spark refusing to die. Daniel leaned back in his office chair, city lights glowing behind him. His lips curled in a smirk as he read Emma's desperate reply. He said, "She knows, and she still won't stop me." The arrogance in his tone dripped like poison. His reflection in the glass tower window was proud, untouchable. He sipped expensive whiskey, savoring his power. Emma was always too soft, he whispered, enjoying his illusion of control. Yet beneath the mask, his eyes flickered with unease. He knew her spirit, the fire he once loved, but now underestimated. Still, he brushed it aside, drowning in his ego. He tightened his tie, his polished armor against guilt. He told himself, "I win, always." But the tremor in his hand betrayed a fear he refused to acknowledge. His lies felt heavy, and somewhere deep inside, Daniel wondered if Emma's silence was her surrender, or her preparation. Emma stumbled through the night streets, neon lights flickering overhead. Her thoughts screamed, but her lips whispered, "Where do I go?" The city felt cruel, strangers rushing past, their faces blurred with indifference. She wrapped her arms around herself, trembling. The rain began to fall, soaking her sweater, plastering her hair to her face. She ducked into a small alley, leaning against the cold brick wall. Her breath came in gasps, each inhale sharp. The world she trusted was gone, and all she had was the bitter rain. She whispered, "Help me." But no one answered. Yet in the silence, her mind formed Daniel's face, his smirk etched like fire into her memory. She clenched her fists, her tears hidden by the rain. The storm outside matched the one raging inside her. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was the beginning of resolve. The door creaked as Emma entered the dimly lit bookstore. The air smelled of dust and forgotten stories. In the corner sat Mr. Harris, 58, male, silver hair, worn coat, eyes sharp yet kind. He raised his head, studying Emma's broken form. Emma whispered, "I need to know how to fight back." Her voice trembled, yet determination threaded through. Mr. Harris leaned forward, his gaze heavy with history. He said, "Revenge is a fire, Emma. If you don't control it, it consumes you." She clenched her fists, defiance in her tear-stained eyes. "I won't be consumed. I will burn only those who deserve it. The words carried weight, heavy in the dusty room. Harris nodded slowly, the lines on his face deepening. He saw the storm within her and recognized it. He said, "Then let me show you where to begin." Emma sat on the floor of her dim apartment, shards of glass still scattered from the photo she had broken earlier. The silence felt heavy, pressing against her chest, each second reminding her of betrayal. She whispered, "I lost love. I lost trust, but I won't lose myself." The pain in her chest had not faded, but it burned now with a darker purpose. She remembered Daniel's smirk, Sarah's laughter, every lie dripping like poison into her veins. She felt anger shape her grief into something stronger, something unbreakable. She reached for her notebook, flipping open pages filled with her thoughts, her pain, her wounds. Her hand shook, but she began writing names, carving words like scars into the paper. She wrote, "Daniel, Sarah." The ink smudged as her tears fell, but she kept writing. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "This isn't the end. It's the beginning." And in that moment, Emma was no longer broken. She was reborn in her fury. Emma walked past the quiet cemetery gates, the night air sharp against her skin. She clutched a single flower, her knuckles white from the grip. Her eyes burned as she whispered, "I'll never forget you." She stopped before Sarah's brother's grave, the catalyst for everything Daniel had stolen. Memories rushed in, Sarah laughing under sunlight, Daniel's lies destroying trust. Emma knelt, her tears dripping onto the damp earth, her voice shaking. "Your suffering will not be ignored, I promise." The silence answered, but it carried weight, as though the earth itself demanded vengeance. Emma pressed her palm against the cold stone, grief etched in every breath. She whispered, "They will pay." Standing, she looked at the dark sky above, stars hidden by clouds. It was as if the night itself conspired with her. She left the flower on the grave, her footsteps echoing on the stone path, carrying both sorrow and fire. The bookstore smelled of ink and time, shelves towering over Emma as she stepped in again. Mr. Harris watched her from behind a desk, his silver hair catching the dim lamp glow. Emma's eyes were red but steady. She said, "Teach me." Her voice cracked, but it carried steel. Harris leaned forward, his worn hands folding together. He said, "Revenge is not a game. It's a chain that binds both hunter and prey." Emma's lips pressed into a firm line, her heart racing. "Then show me how to break it." Harris studied her, seeing a fire that reminded him of his younger self. His sigh was heavy, filled with decades of scars. He said, "If you walk this path, you can't turn back." Emma whispered, "I have nothing left to lose." His eyes softened, those shadows haunted them. He rose, pulling a worn book from the shelf, handing her her first lesson. In the glass tower office, Daniel poured another drink, his smirk unshaken. By his side stood Marcus, 40, male, broad frame, dark beard, his silent enforcer. Daniel raised his glass. "To power, Marcus, to everything we own." Marcus said nothing, but his eyes betrayed discomfort. He had carried out Daniel's orders for years, but Emma's name whispered in the halls unsettled him. Daniel leaned closer, his voice venomous. "Emma is nothing, a shadow." Yet, deep inside, Marcus's silence grew heavy, questions clawing at his loyalty. He remembered the innocent faces harmed by Daniel's greed. Still, fear kept him bound. Daniel's laughter filled the room, polished and sharp. Marcus's jaw tightened, fists clenched behind his back. In the glass reflection, Daniel looked untouchable, but Marcus saw cracks forming. For the first time, doubt stood in the room, and it stood tall. Emma sat at her kitchen table, candlelight flickering against the walls. The notebook lay open before her, names scrawled across the pages. She traced Daniel's name with her fingertip, whispering, "I will end this." Her voice trembled, but grew stronger with each word. She thought of Sarah, of broken trust, of Harris' warning. She felt fear gnaw at her, but anger silenced it. Emma said, I am not the victim anymore. She lifted her pen, writing notes, connections, planning her path. Each stroke of ink was a vow, each word another weapon. She whispered, Daniel, Sarah, Marcus, every one of you will answer. The flame flickered higher, shadows dancing across her face. In that moment, Emma's transformation was sealed. She was not the same woman broken by betrayal. She had become something far more dangerous, forged by pain into steel. Emma waited in the lobby's shadow, the security camera blinking like a tired eye. Mr. Harris had traced Daniel's shell company to this floor, and the elevator hummed like a dare. Emma said, If I freeze, I lose. Her voice steadied as she slid a borrowed badge across the reader. The door clicked, soft as a threat. Harris said, In and out, 5 minutes, and never look back on entry. She nodded, breath thin and focused. The corridor stretched long, sterile, and cold. Glass walls held secrets behind glossy reflections. Emma said, You thought I would stay broken. She found a conference room, lights asleep, and snapped photos of contracts, stamped with Daniel's logo. Her hands still shook, but her aim was true. Footsteps echoed, heavy, getting closer. Harris said, Now, Emma, leave. She slipped the badge into her sleeve and moved. The elevator dinged, too bright, too loud. She stepped in anyway, and refused to look scared. The diner smelled of coffee and rain as neon painted the windows in bruised pink. Whoa. Noah slid into the booth, eyes scanning the door. Noah said, You're playing with fire. Emma held her cup like a shield. She said, Fire is all I have. He leaned in, voice low but urgent. Noah, said Daniel, buries people with paperwork and whispers. He doesn't swing fists, he hires storms. Emma stared through the glass, seeing the tower that caged her life. She said, I got proof tonight. Noah flinched, then sighed. He said, Then you're mocked. A siren moaned far off, thin as regret. Emma said, I won't turn back. Noah's jaw tightened, fear and loyalty wrestling behind his eyes. Noah said, If you fall, I will not watch. Emma touched his hand, brief as lightning. She said, Then stand with me. The neon flickered like a heartbeat that refused to quit. Daniel watched access logs bloom across his screen, each timestamp a whisper of trespass. He swirled whiskey and smiled without warmth. Daniel said, Curious little ghost. The skyline glittered, but his temple pulsed. He called Marcus, letting the silence stretch like wire. Daniel said, Someone touched the 6th floor tonight. Marcus's breath rumbled like a distant truck. Marcus said, Emma. Daniel tilted his head, savoring the name as if it were a flaw in crystal. He said, Find out how she breathes. The office seemed to lean closer, glass hungry for confession. Daniel set the glass down with a soft click. He said, No police. Noise is a currency I do not spend. Marcus said, Understood. Daniel closed the logs and stared at his reflection. The city stared back, full of teeth. He whispered, Run, if you can. Yet a shiver crawled up his spine and would not leave him. In the back of the bookstore, lamplight made small halos on the oak table. Mr. Harris rolled up his sleeve and traced an old scar like a coastline. Harris said, I once fed revenge until it ate my name. Emma listened, the weight of his words heavy as iron. He slid a faded file toward her, pages brittle with truth. Harris said, You need leverage, not rage. Emma said, I took documents, but I want confession. Harris nodded slowly, eyes reflecting the lamp's amber ring. He said, Confession is a theater. Build the stage, trap the light, control the exits. Emma breathed in paper and dust and resolve. She said, Then I will become the stage. Harris smiled, sad and proud. He said, Then learn the curtain's rope. He mapped a plan, his pencil tapping like a metronome. The bookstore seemed to hold its breath, as if stories feared what came next. The parking garage smelled of cold concrete and old rain. Emma's footsteps echoed, quick and careful. A shadow, unpeeled from a pillar, broad and still. Marcus said, "Give me the files." Emma's pulse kicked, but her face did not. She said, "Tell Daniel he should ask me himself." Marcus stepped closer, the air shrinking. He said, "I am asking." Emma kept moving, angling toward the stairwell light. She said, "You serve him because fear pays on time." For a beat, Marcus flinched, truth bumping his armor. He said, "Walk away." Emma's hand hovered over the rail. She said, "I walked this far to stop." Engines throbbed above, a dull thunder. Marcus's jaw clenched, then loosened. He said, "Next time I won't talk." Emma slipped into the stairwell, heart beating like drums, and promised the echo she would be ready. Emma leaned against the cracked brick wall of the alley, her phone pressed to her ear as she listened to the hushed voice. The caller said, "You think Harris is clean? He once worked with Daniel." Her breath caught, doubt gnawing. She said, "You're lying." The voice answered, "Check the records, Emma. His scars were earned in Daniel's shadow." Her heart raced as the line went dead, silence colder than the night air. She remembered Harris's warnings, his lessons wrapped in grief, but now every word felt stained with betrayal. She whispered, "Did you use me too?" Rage clashed with disbelief, her fists trembling. Her notebook felt heavier in her bag, its pages now uncertain weapons. A siren wailed in the distance, mocking her indecision. She pressed her forehead against the wall, breath sharp. Emma said, "If you played me, Harris, I'll burn you too." Trust had cracked again, leaving only shards. Emma stormed into the bookstore, slamming the door so hard, dust fell from shelves. Harris rose slowly, eyes narrowing as if he had expected this storm. Emma shouted, "Tell me the truth, did you work with him?" Her words cracked the silence like glass. Harris froze, jaw tight, then sighed with the weight of years. He said, "Once, long ago, I thought I could outplay him." Emma's chest heaved, betrayal twisting inside her. "And you never told me," she snapped. Harris's gaze lowered. "Because I failed, Emma. My scars remind me." His sleeve slid down, shadowing his arm. The truth cut sharper than knives. She wanted to scream, but instead whispered, "You were supposed to guide me, not deceive me." Harris lifted his head, eyes tired but unwavering. "I guide you still, Emma. But yes, my hands are not clean." The air between them thickened, fragile as glass about to break. "I'll one more throw." Daniel lounged in his office, the skyline behind him glowing like a crown. Sarah sat opposite, her smile sharp as glass. Sarah said, "Emma thinks Harris is her savior. How tragic." Daniel chuckled, swirling his whiskey. "Let her choke on her doubts. It weakens her." Sarah leaned closer, eyes gleaming. "But doubt makes fire burn hotter. She will not stop." Daniel smirked, brushing a speck from his sleeve. "She'll burn herself first." Their laughter filled the room, cold and venomous. Yet Daniel's eyes lingered on the city beyond, where shadows seemed to move like threats. He muttered, "Still, we tighten the noose." Sarah's hand slid across the table, fingers brushing contracts stolen from Emma's path. She whispered, "Then we bury her." The air in the office thickened, two betrayers bound by greed and cruelty. Neither noticed the cracks forming beneath their polished masks. The night air stung as Noah walked beside Emma, under flickering streetlights. He said, "You don't trust Harris now, do you?" Emma clenched her jaw, her steps quick. She muttered, "I can't afford blind trust anymore." Noah's voice softened. "But you can't fight alone." She stopped, staring at the cracked pavement. "I've been alone since Daniel lied," she whispered. Noah reached for her hand, but let it fall back, fear in his eyes. "Emma, if you fall too far, I won't recognize you." She met his gaze, tears glimmering but her voice fierce. "Then recognize the woman who refuses to break." The lamplight flickered, painting them both in shifting shadows. Noah exhaled, torn between loyalty and dread. The silence stretched, a fragile bridge between them. Emma said, "Stand with me or stay behind, but I'm moving forward." Her words cut the night, sharp as steel. Emma sat at her kitchen table, her notebook open, pages now filled with names and plans. Candlelight flickered, shadows long across the walls. Her pen pressed hard, carving Daniel's empire into targets. She whispered, "Every lie has a cost." Her hand trembled, not from fear but from the weight of the path ahead. She saw Harris' weary face, Noah's warning eyes, Sarah's laugh like poison. Rage and doubt warred inside her, but revenge anchored her still. She whispered again, firmer, "I will burn them all." The words echoed, heavy as a vow. She tore a page free, crumpling it and throwing it into the flame. The fire devoured it, light, flaring. Emma's lips curled into a grim smile. Her pain had hardened into a blade, and tomorrow it would cut. She pressed her palm flat against the notebook, sealing her promise in ink and fire. The bookstore's lamp glowed faintly, dust swirling as Emma slammed her notebook on the table. Her voice cracked with fury. "You warned me of fire, Harris, yet you kept your sins hidden." Harris lowered his gaze, his weathered face shadowed with shame. He said, "I warned you because I know the hunger. I fed it once, and it nearly took my soul." Emma's eyes blazed, tears glistening but held back. "You expect me to trust you now?" Harris leaned closer, scars on his arm catching the light. "Trust the lessons, not the man. My scars are your warning." Emma's fists clenched around the notebook, pages rattling. "Then tell me, how do I win without becoming him?" Silence fell, heavy with ghosts. Harris finally whispered, "By remembering who you are at the edge." His voice shook, fragile yet resolute. Emma turned away, her jaw tight. For the first time, she feared not her enemies, but the woman she was becoming. Emma walked alone through the silent park, branches whispering above her in the night wind. Noah caught up, breathless, pulling at her arm. "Emma, this is madness." She ripped free, eyes hard. "Madness is silence. Madness is doing nothing." Noah's voice cracked. "You're not the woman I knew." Her lips trembled, but her voice stayed fierce. "The woman you knew was blind. I see clearly now." He shook his head, torn between fear and devotion. "If you walk this path, you may lose yourself." She whispered, "Then I'll lose myself to justice, not to lies." A storm churned in the distance, thunder faint but growing. Noah's jaw clenched as he stepped back, his silence heavier than words. Emma stood beneath the swaying trees, defiant, her shadow long and sharp. Her heart pounded, torn between longing for his trust and knowing she must walk alone. In the glass tower, Daniel stood at the head of the boardroom, contracts spread like weapons. His voice cut the silence. "This empire is untouchable." His executives nodded, fear hiding behind forced smiles. He raised a hand, signaling for quiet. "Emma thinks she can tear at threads, but she forgets. I own the cloth." Marcus stood at the wall, arms folded, eyes dark with unease. He said nothing, though his silence spoke volumes. Daniel turned sharply, his smirk sharp as glass. "Loyalty, Marcus. I trust it still lives in you." Marcus nodded, but his clenched jaw betrayed doubt. Daniel lifted a glass of whiskey and toast. "To power, to permanence." Laughter rippled weakly through the room, but tension lingered like smoke. Behind Daniel's polished facade, cracks deepened, unseen by those blinded by his charm. His empire was not untouchable. It was fragile, trembling under Emma's unseen hand. Marcus stood alone in the dim parking lot, cigarette smoke curling in the cold air. His phone buzzed, Daniel's voice hissing through. "You watch her, and if she moves, you end her." Marcus stared into the dark, his chest heavy. He whispered to himself, "How many lives do I bury before I'm no better than him?" His hands trembled as he crushed the cigarette under his boot. Memories of innocent faces haunted him, the weight of blood pressing down. Daniel barked. "Are you listening?" Marcus replied, "Yes," but his voice was flat, hollow. He knew he could not obey much longer. His loyalty was cracking, and Emma's fire had shown him a truth he could no longer unsee. He muttered to the empty lot, "One day, Daniel, I'll turn." For the first time in years, Marcus felt fear not of Daniel, but of his own conscience roaring awake. Emma's apartment glowed with candlelight, her notebook open like a map of war. She flipped through pages, each name circled, each arrow pointing to Daniel's empire. Her pen scratched furiously, connecting Sarah's betrayal to Marcus's silence, Harris's to Daniel's lies. She whispered, "It all ties back to you." Her chest heaved as she leaned closer, the flame dancing in her determined eyes. Fear gnawed at her, whispering of failure, but rage silenced it. She whispered again, firmer, "I will take everything you built, Daniel, piece by piece." She ripped out a page, crumpled it, and fed it to the fire. The flames leapt higher, shadows stretching long across the walls. Her lips curled into a grim smile. Emma was no longer the broken woman clutching a shattered frame. She was the storm Daniel had unleashed, and tomorrow he would learn the cost of betrayal. The graveyard was silent under a pale moon, as Emma traced her fingers across Sarah's brother's headstone. Her breath caught when she noticed fresh flowers, a detail she hadn't placed. A folded note slipped beneath them bore Harris's handwriting. Emma unfolded it with shaking hands, her eyes scanning words that bled truth. Daniel orchestrated his death. I was there. I did nothing. Her heart pounded as the world tilted, betrayal now sharper, deeper. Harris had carried guilt not just of alliance but of silence. Tears blurred the ink as she whispered, "You let him die." Her voice cracked, grief turning raw. Her chest heaved, rage burning into her veins. The truth she thought she knew fractured into jagged shards. She whispered again, "Then Daniel is guilty of more than lies. He's guilty of blood." The night wind hissed through trees, as if echoing her vow. Daniel sat in his penthouse, whiskey untouched, staring into the dark skyline. His polished calm cracked as his reflection mocked him in the glass. He muttered, "She knows too much." Sarah paced behind him, her heels sharp against marble. "She's stronger than you think." Daniel snapped, "She's nothing." A shadow screaming in the dark. Yet his hands trembled as he straightened his tie. Sarah's smirk sharpened. Shadows grow when the light is brightest. His eyes narrowed, venom flashing. "Then we smother the light." He gripped the table, knuckles white, mask slipping for the first time. The empire he believed untouchable now felt fragile, shaking at its foundations. Sarah watched him, amused but wary, as though the cracks in his armor pleased her but warned of danger. Daniel whispered to himself, "I will not fall to her." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Marcus leaned against the hood of his car in the deserted lot, the night wind cutting cold. His phone buzzed again, Daniel's command burning through the speaker. "You end her now." Marcus's jaw clenched, but his silence stretched long. Emma stepped from the shadows, her eyes sharp, notebook clutched tight. She said, "You don't have to obey him." His eyes narrowed, his chest rising heavy. "You think it's choice? He owns me." Emma stepped closer, defiant. "No. He cages you because you let him." Marcus's fists shook, rage at himself more than her. She whispered, "Stand with me, or keep serving a man who spills blood and laughs." His shoulders sagged, eyes flickering with conflict. For the first time, Marcus turned off his phone, tossing it aside. He growled, "One chance, Emma. One." It was not surrender but a crack, and she knew it was enough. Noah sat across from Emma in the diner, his eyes filled with pain. He whispered, "I don't know who you are anymore." Emma held her coffee, knuckles pale, staring at him with unblinking resolve. "I'm who I have to be." His jaw tightened, his voice shaking. "You scare me, Emma. Your fire burns too hot." Her lips trembled, but she forced steel into her words. "Better to burn than to be ash." He slammed his hand on the table, coffee rippling. If you cross that line, there's no return. Emma leaned closer, her eyes gleaming. Then don't follow me, but don't stand in my way. The silence hung heavy, neon flickering over them. Noah's chest rose and fell, torn between loyalty and dread. Finally, he whispered, I'll stand by you, but if you break, I'll stop you myself. Her gaze hardened, yet tears threatened to spill. Emma sat alone in her apartment, the candle flame trembling like her breath. She spread the files across the table, contracts, photos, names, everything Daniel had buried. Her hands shook as she pieced it together: Sarah's betrayal, Marcus's silence, Harris's scars, Daniel's crimes. She whispered, every road leads to you. Her pen circled his name, ink pressing deep into the paper like carved stone. She muttered, this ends now. Her chest ached, torn between rage and exhaustion. The fire inside her had burned too long to be extinguished. She placed Harris' note at the center of the table, the confession of silence that damned them all. Her voice steadied, heavy with finality. I will drag you into the light. She pressed her palm against the pile of evidence, sealing her vow. Tomorrow would not be another step. Tomorrow would be war. The night storm raged over the city as Emma stepped into Daniel's tower, her notebook clutched like a weapon. Security lights flickered, thunder echoing through glass halls. Her chest tightened, but her eyes burned with resolve. She whispered, no more running. Each step echoed like a drumbeat of war. Marcus appeared from the shadows, silent but firm, nodding once before turning away, his defiance now chosen. Emma's heart raced as she entered the boardroom, files in hand, evidence heavy with truth. Daniel stood tall at the head of the table, his smirk faint but trembling. So the ghost arrives. Emma's voice cut sharp. I'm not your ghost. I'm your reckoning. Silence fell thick, broken only by the rumble of thunder. The storm outside mirrored the war inside, and the final confrontation had begun. Mr. Harris entered quietly, rain dripping from his coat, his silver hair matted. His presence drew the room into silence. Emma turned, torn between anger and gratitude. Harris said, I failed once. Tonight I will not. Daniel's laugh echoed, hollow and sharp. Two broken relics standing against me. Harris's gaze hardened, scars visible under the lamplight. Relics survive, Daniel. Your empire rots. Emma's voice joined his. And tonight, it falls. The storm cracked, light flaring across their faces. Daniel slammed his hand on the table, fury spilling. You will crawl before me. Harris stepped forward, his body between Emma and Daniel, a shield built of regret. His voice thundered. Not this time. For a moment, Emma saw not weakness in Harris, but strength carved from years of pain. Daniel lunged forward, slamming files from Emma's hand, papers scattering like wounded birds. You think scraps will undo me? His roar filled the room. Emma steadied herself, fire in her eyes. These scraps are your empire's bones. Daniel grabbed her wrist, grip bruising. You were always weak. Emma met his stare, unflinching. And you were always afraid. Marcus moved, his shadow falling across them. His fists clenched, voice low but steady. Let her go. Daniel snarled, You dare betray me. Marcus stepped closer, towering. I was blind. Not anymore. The air vibrated with violence, storm hammering the glass. Emma tore free, holding Daniel's discarded files high. The world will see you. Daniel's face twisted, mask shattering, the predator exposed as nothing but desperation. The storm roared as Daniel stumbled back, Marcus's shove breaking his grip. Emma stepped forward, her voice steel. Every lie ends here. Daniel's eyes darted to the door, fear breaking his mask. You think they'll believe you? Emma slammed the files onto the table, pages spreading like fire. They won't need to believe. They'll see. Daniel lunged again, but Harris blocked him, his scarred arm raised like a wall. I carried silence once, Daniel. No longer. Daniel spat, rage spilling. I made you all. Emma's eyes narrowed, her voice final. And now we unmake you. Lightning split the sky, the glass trembling as the storm howled. Daniel's empire, his lies, his pride, everything cracked in that moment, fragile as glass under Emma's defiance. Daniel collapsed to his knees, his empire shredded around him. Rain hammered the glass, thunder shaking the tower. Emma stood over him, her eyes burning with victory and sorrow. He gasped, "You think you've won?" She whispered, "No, Daniel, I ended you." His laugh broke, jagged and hollow, as he buried his face in his hands. Emma gathered the files, her hands steady now. Harris placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice weary but proud. "You did what I could not." Marcus stood silent, the storm reflected in his eyes, chains finally broken. Noah entered at last, drenched from rain, his gaze meeting Emma's. For a moment, the storm quieted in her heart. Emma whispered, "It is finished." The room fell silent, except for rain, the final echo of a war long fought. Her vow was kept, her revenge complete.